Hey Todd, Alex Iafallo is a guy who had a breakout year of sorts last year. What are the next steps for him, as he comes into another year here with the Kings?
Well, I thought Alex had a tremendous season last year, especially the second half. So, if he can build on that part of his game, the offensive part, he'll complement the two guys that he's playing with. We trust him in every situation: power play, penalty kill, 5-on-5. He may not be the fancy guy. He may not be the top scoring winger in the league, but he's certainly a trustworthy player that the coaches appreciate. I know the teammates really appreciate him too, and that goes a long way. So just keep working on your game. I think more offense is going to come from him, and I think he understands how we want to do things now. So it can be a year-long process for him, not just the second half of the season.
And you talked about, the fatigue factor a bit over the last 2 days. How did you feel that the group managed that today? And are there any plans to kind of tweak, how you're running these sessions as you get into next week after the off day tomorrow?
I think you could see a level of fatigue in the group today. It doesn't matter what you do in the summer, including skating, until you get out there, play 5-on-5, and get put through drills and game situations where people are leaning on you, and there's some hooking, some holding, some battles around the net. Your body isn't quite ready for it. So I thought they battled through it really well. You could see the fatigue factor creep in a little bit. We'll be aware of rest and how important that will be. Tomorrow will be an off day for us, if you can believe that, 3 days into camp, but we need it. And we'll be back at it Monday. We'll continue to, we'll shift the groups around a little bit, and then we'll continue to scrimmage every day, but in controlled environments, controlled situations where we're working on our game.
Thanks, Todd.
Okay, next up, John Hoven.
Hey, Todd, just 3 days of scrimmages under your belt now. Can you maybe just reflect back and give us a high and maybe a low?
Well, the high was just getting back on the ice. The first day, there was so much almost nervous energy. You guys had a lot of gas in the tank, gas they needed to burn off. It was fast. It was somewhat out of control at times. I think the second day was the most controlled the scrimmage was. And the third day, as the fatigue factor came in, there was more risk. There was more hope plays made, but it wasn't surprising. It's something that we thought would happen based on the energy level as it diminished. As far as players go, I think for the most part, everybody showed up ready to play and in relatively good condition. They've picked things up. I was asked in the coach's room, what'd you like the most about the 3 days? And for me, it was organically the veteran players and the players that have been in our organization doing things that we haven't even reminded them of, whether it be a certain type of forecheck in the neutral zone, breakouts, words we use, even hearing them on the bench. That was really encouraging for us. And I think that gives us an indication that structurally we're a lot further along than we were after 3 days last year. Doesn't mean we're out of the woods. We've got a lot of work left, but that would be a positive.
And we've spent a lot of time talking about the forwards, defensively, only really about maybe Mata and Doughty. But what about some of the younger defensemen and thoughts on Mikey Anderson or maybe a Sean Walker, et cetera?
Yeah, I would consider Mikey Anderson the youngest of the group. Clegg, Dursey, those type of players as well. But Mikey, in my mind, has worked his way into our lineup, and again at camp, it looks like he's going to stay there. The amount of poise and the type of plays he makes, not only offensively but also defensively, is pretty rewarding. Clegg and Dursey have both come in and shown that they're knocking on the door. Movari, there's others. Toby Bjornfoot isn't even here, but the in-between range, if you're talking Roy and Walker, McDermott, they all look sharp, considering they look like they're ready to play. And, until we really get going against Minnesota, those first few games, it'll be hard to completely evaluate them, but I like where they're at right now.
Thanks, Todd.
Next up, we've got Dennis Bernstein. Todd, I want to go back to Alec for a second. He's certainly a core player on this team, but he's entering a situation where if something doesn't happen in the next 10 to 12 days, he's going to enter the season on his walk year. He's not worried about a starting spot or production, but do you have conversations with players in their walk years about expectations of putting too much pressure on them? And if you do, what kind of conversations are they?
Only if I feel like I have to. And in Alex's case, I don't think that that conversation is warranted right now. I thought he was perhaps our best player on the ice today, the way he managed himself, the way he skated. The business part of the game will take care of itself. If he does his job, I do mine. The players around him continue to go. Ultimately, as a coach, you want a player like that to be rewarded and handsomely, because that means he had one heck of a year, and we're moving forward. So it's our job to get him the best possible contract, and that's what he'll do. That's what we'll do, and the business side will take care of it later on.
Thanks, Todd. Appreciate it.
Next up, Daryl Evans.
Hi, Todd. As you take a look at the first few days of camp, are there any challenges that maybe you didn't foresee coming about? Anything pop out to you?
Well, heading into day one, you're concerned because of all the unusual things that are happening around the rink, the masks, the flow of camp, where we have to meet, details that are important in a training camp. You want things to go off without a hitch. You want to show the players that you've done your homework over the summer and you're running a real clean, fast, efficient training camp. But this one was different, and I'm really proud of the staff, not the coaches, but the training staff, the equipment people, the medical people, to pull it off the way they have to this point and be as organized as they've been. It's something that's really impressive. So that part of it's been really good. As far as the unexpected on the ice surface, nothing that has surprised or shocked us. The quality of play is perhaps a little bit higher than maybe some other camps. And I mean that respectfully, but to the junior kids that aren't here, a lot of times you start training camp with 18-year-olds that have never been in this environment. They get drafted and they're coming to LA for the first time. They're looking over and they see Doughty and Kopitar and Quick, and they're a little in awe, and then they step on the ice, and it's part of the experience factor that we want them to have. But they step on the ice and they're not quite ready for the game. The participants in this camp were ready. Everybody's at a different level, but they've experienced it once already. They're ready, and they came to play. So it was smooth that way.
And when you look at like day one coming in again, everybody was in, uncharted territory, so to speak, with COVID. Do you sense things starting to kind of settle down and the guys are just focusing? It looks more like a normal camp now that you've been around for a few days with it?
I think that's fair to say. If wearing masks looks normal, then yes, that's probably the oddest thing. Food type services, we're not eating in the building. You've got to go outside. There's tables set up and spread outside where guys eat. So there's still a lot of visual things that are different, but the feel of what we come to the rink to do is familiar.
Thank you, sir.
Next up is Steven Dorfman.
Hey, Coach. When you talk about fatigue, is it different this year after 3 days than maybe previous camps after 3 days because of the layoff?
Hard to judge. I would say no. I think that 3 days in any other season is taxing. Our players, for the most part, at least for the ones that have been around here for the last 6 weeks, have worked really hard. They've been on the ice every day. They're in pretty good condition. They were pushed hard, both on and off the ice, and they seem to be handling it well. The difference is the 5-on-5 play. We haven't been able to, throughout this COVID era, we haven't been able to go on the ice with 20 players where you could play 5-on-5 and get guys a rest. A lot of it was 3-on-3. It was small games. Now we're full ice 5-on-5, and that is taxing physically, but I don't think it's any worse than any other season at this point.
Thank you.
Next up, Lisa Dillman.
Yeah, hi Todd. Following up on something you said, when you guys regroup again on Monday, would you pretty much have split into two groups, NHL players and non-NHLers, for lack of a better word?
Well, everybody's still going to be in the NHL camp. It's going to look, you'll see the rosters and you'll go, geez, Todd and the King management and the coaches have made their decision. This is NHL and that's development American Hockey League type players, but that's not the case. Athanasiou isn't even here yet. Our World Junior players aren't here yet. We have to make some moves so that we can begin to work on important parts of the game, power play, penalty kill. And you can't do that when your players are spread out in two different groups. We'll work on power play and we need the units together. We'll work on penalty kill and we need the units together. If I'm a player and I told them this, if you're in Group A and you think you're on the National Hockey League team, you're dreaming right now because we're nowhere near making decisions final. If you're in Group B and you feel like you've been released and you're stuck in the American League, shame on you because that's not the case. We will move players around from days, depending on what we're working on day to day. And we legitimately could have a 29-man roster when you think of 23 and 6 on the taxi squad. So if somebody ends up being a little disappointed and is dragging their lip a little bit, it's probably going to cost them in the long run. I don't think that will happen, but you never know.
Andreas, what day would he be on the ice, assuming his testing goes as expected?
Yeah, I think I might be wrong. So somewhere around the 7th in that range. He's got to run his quarantine and get the number of tests that is required so that he can enter our environment or bubble or whatever we want to call it. But I think it's the 7th.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next up, Jack Harris.
Hey, Todd, we've talked about how this short camp could be especially hard on the goaltenders. Just how have they looked, sharpness wise through these first 3 days?
Yeah, to your comment and probably mine from the other day, they're probably the ones that have the most gap to close, and that's not because they're not sharp or didn't do their homework. It's just that once you get in the net and the pucks start coming at you for real, and there's traffic, and you've got to read plays, they've got the most work to do, and we're going to work hard with them. We're going to be patient with them, and we've got to make sure that we've got 2, 3, 4 of them up and running by this time the season starts. So to put full credence on or full evaluation on these scrimmages based on goaltending, I think is really unfair to them and the people around them. That's not to say that they didn't have good days as well. So they did perform at a pretty good level, and we'll keep working with them.
And then as far as the roster, is it fair to assume that early in the season, you guys might be more fluid than usual in terms of maybe mixing up lineups or just kind of those last 3 or 4 spots on your 23-man?
Yes and no. How's that for an awful answer? It depends on a lot of factors. It depends on where the young players are, what they look like when they arrive from the World Juniors. It depends on how quick we come together here. It'll depend on bumps and bruises. It will depend on scheduling. What will happen at the American League level. We don't want players sitting on taxi squads that need to be playing. And it makes no sense to have a certain individual that needs to experience games just sitting on a roster because maybe they're close to the NHL. But those are all philosophical questions that we'll have to answer as an organization over the next 2 weeks. We'll have to figure out how we want to use, and we've talked about it a fair amount, but how we want to use the taxi squad, how big we want our roster to be. Keep in mind that we want to have some quick pace practices, and doing that with 29 or 30 players isn't always easy. So we've got to balance that out as well.
Sounds good. Thanks.